Right, I think we're on time. We're going to do some things a little different tonight. We're not going to have a break, we're just going to do it in one fell swoop tonight. I'll introduce the panel to you shortly, and then I'll tell you how the evening's going to run. We're going to have some words from our Chief Operating Officer, our Commercial Director, and the Director of the AFC Community Trust. And then we'll open the floor to questions to the panel, both football and non-related questions. Before we do get underway, just a reminder, I often say this, I know you're probably bored of this, we're not planning a fire alarm this evening, so if you do hear the fire alarm, we're not planning to test it, so if you do hear the fire alarm this evening, just make your way out of the building onto the car park. Hopefully that won't happen. Right, without further ado, I'm going to introduce the panel. We'll give them a round of applause at the end. First up on the panel, we have our Chief Operating Officer, George Delves. Next to George is our recently appointed Director of Commercial and Marketing. Great experience in the football industry with the likes of Everton and Wrexham, and we're delighted he's now at Rochdale, and Andy Duff. Next to Andy, on Andy's right, is a guy who needs no introduction whatsoever, but I'm going to do it anyway. 197 appearances here at the Heart of Defence at the Crown Hall Arena, and 2 goals as well. Our first team coach, just about to start his second season as our head coach. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Jim McNulty. Next to Jim is another director who's representing the Dale Supporters Trust. It's Murray Knight. Next to Murray is Richard Knight, another one of our directors. And last but certainly not least at the end, our director of the Rochdale AFC Community Trust, Ryan Bradley. Can we have a round of applause for our panel this evening? So the way it's going to work, we're going to have some words from George, from Andy, from Ryan, and then we'll open the floor to some questions to Jimmy and the rest of the panel. You'll be given a chance to ask a question. If you feel it warrants a follow-up question, we'll give you that opportunity. So without further ado, our first speaker is George Delves, our Chief Operating Officer.
Evening everyone, thank you very much for turning up. As Dave alluded to a moment ago, we're just going to run things a little bit differently to what we've traditionally run fans forums this evening. We're really conscious that there's been loads of different things going on over the past couple of weeks, so many of you will have tuned into Jim's interview on Radio Manchester yesterday. We had our monthly catch-up as a board of directors and senior staff with the Dale Trust just last week, which hopefully will have addressed at least some of the questions people in the room will have today. And if we go back a couple of months, we had Cameron, Jamie, Adam, and the rest of the board of directors here to answer some questions in terms of the change of ownership. So how it's going to work tonight, myself, Andy and Ryan are going to just have a few minutes just to update people on where we're at, and then it's just going to be an open forum for questions. We expect, as always, the vast majority of questions will be for Jim on football matters, but myself, Andy, Murray, Richard and Ryan are all here for any questions that you might have in our respective areas. So first things to say, just to lean on a question that you were asked actually last night, Jim, by the guys on Radio Manchester. You were asked what are the kind of the visible things following the change of ownership and the new investment at the moment, and the really simple answer is that there's tons of stuff, and you alluded to this a little bit, there's tons of stuff going on in the background, but the really visible things are going to take a little while to manifest themselves. The guys have talked a lot about the 3-year plan to get back into the EFL and a 5-year plan to make the club sustainable. So it's not even been 5 months yet, so whilst we're working towards a lot of those things, a number of those things won't become visible just yet. One thing that we do hope will become a little bit more visible over the next few weeks is the fact that we're trying to re-resource the club and make sure that we've got some actual bodies on the ground, as it were, to deliver some of the things both on and off the field that you guys all want. So again, you alluded to it a little bit yesterday, Jim, that we were running, to call it a skeleton staff would probably be doing that phrase a disservice, to be honest. We were constantly losing staff, left, right and centre, and we had numerous staff across all areas of the football club who were doing the jobs of what would have been 3, 4, 5 people in the past, both on the football side and the non-football side. We're slowly trying to re-resource ourselves and get ourselves back. Andy will talk a little bit about his role in a moment. We're working towards things on a first team point of view, so we have been in a position to get Jim at least one extra member of staff over the course of the summer that he wanted. We've got a member of staff just sat on the front table here, Joe Heaton, who's going to be starting with us next week to help re-resource everything from a media point of view. Many of you will know Joe from commentaries on iFollow and National League TV. So again, that's a good step forwards. What we're really trying to get across is the fact that obviously, whilst Richard and Murray are here with us tonight, several members of the board of directors aren't with us, and that's quite reflective of how the club operates on a day-to-day basis. So, as much as Cameron, his family, and the Ogden Trust have made an incredible gesture and put money into the football club, they're not here on a day-to-day basis, and they're not kind of actively working on club business day in, day out, as many of the other directors aren't either. It's really really important to get that message across that everyone's got their own little projects, there's lots of good work going on in lots of areas, but we're moving into a phase of the club now whereby the ownership group and the board of directors are really keen to empower the staff to deliver and work across their areas towards those goals that we've talked about: 3 years into the EFL, 5 years sustainability, and also the impact within the town from a community angle as well. It's going to be a really collegiate approach. There's going to be tons of director involvement, but there's going to be tons of staff involvement as well. And it's really, the onus is going to switch a little bit on the staff trying to be the ones to deliver against those goals. In the past, there's been a perception amongst everybody, really, I suppose, and much of that is our fault for the way that the messages that we've delivered, that the directors are the ones here day in, day out. Everything that goes wrong at the club is the director's fault. That's not the case. Everyone, there's always collective responsibility across everything at the football club. But us as a senior group of staff will look to take on a little bit more of that responsibility, and it's ultimately it's going to be our responsibility to try and deliver against those goals with excellent support from financial and otherwise from the ownership group and the board of directors. The final thing I just wanted to touch on quickly is was just in relation to the actual change of ownership itself. So the word Cameron used when we were here 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, whenever it was the fact that he's a custodian of the football club. The family are a custodian of the football club. The Ogden Trust are a custodian of the football club. We don't like using the words owner. It's not theirs. It's still the custodianship is the key word to use, really. So I suppose the point that I'm trying to make is, whilst we're not a supporter-owned football club on a piece of paper anymore, it's always the fans' club. It always belongs to you guys, and we always welcome any feedback, any opinions, and any questions that you might have on any element of the club whatsoever. We might not always give you answers that you like, but we'll always try to be honest, and we'll always try and work towards those improvements that you guys suggest. So just because we've had that change of ownership doesn't mean the door's closed, doesn't mean the phones don't get answered anymore. We're always all ears, whether that be through the Dale Trust forums or whether that be through questions tonight, or just some informal contact on a match day, or even just popping up and knocking on the door in the week. We're always all ears, and if you have got any concerns or questions about how any element of the club's been run, please do ask. So I'm going to pass on over to Andy. Andy's going to have about 5 minutes, and then we'll pass on to Ryan. Then we'll open it for questions. Thank you.
Hi, it's nice to be here. I know I was here for the Meet the Board event, just literally flew from holiday that day, but I just wanted to spend a bit of time really talk to you about my role, what my responsibilities are, and then what the short-term focus has been over the last week or two, and then kind of longer-term where we're going. First of all, thank you. Listen, I was at the Friendly on Saturday in the Ratcliffe. It was nice to walk around, made to feel incredibly welcome by fans, and also, a massive welcome I personally had from a lot of the business community as well, which is a key part of my role is building those relationships with that business community. So it's been amazing the welcome we had, which has been great. In terms of, got my glasses on. In terms of my focus, the short-term focus, I joined just 8 weeks ago now, has really been launching and relaunching, playing a little bit of catch-up on all the commercial areas for the football club that would be the core football operation. So the hospitality packages, Next week we'll be launching the player sponsorship packages. We had a very successful and enjoyable fixture release date with a lot of the companies. We renewed one stand sponsorship with Smith Metals. We did a back of shirt with Energy Funding Services. And then we're just going through now the final piece around the ground of all our renewals and any new sponsors that are getting involved. So all of that commercial operation about bringing funds into the club and through sponsorship and advertising has been a real key focus for the last sort of 6 or 7 weeks. At the same time, it's important for me to quickly establish relationships with all our key partners, so Crown Oil, Bath Industrials, Castleton Timber, O'Neill's and JW Lee's are all got multi-year contracts with us, so how we manage those relationships and establishing that has been a key part. And it's not very sexy, but reviewing and updating all of our commercial operations, so embedding a really strong, robust foundation of a business, the business that is running a football club, has been important. There has been a significant changeover of staff in my role, and so some of the continuity and some of the best practice around that has gone. So establishing that commercial operation has been key, and we're just starting that journey across retail, advertising, and all those pieces. As we start to get into matches, obviously we've got a friendly this weekend. I can start to look at and review the match day operation. So how's our ticketing working? We were chatting at the weekend. There were some queues before the friendly last week. So how does that work? How do we make sure that's good? How's the hospitality work? What's that like? And what's the fan experience like? Etc. So as we start to get into the home league games, it's an opportunity to look at those. So in the short term, the first couple of months is really about that core football commercial operation. What's working well, and to get that as enjoyable experience as possible that's just working really well. As we move into kind of September, October time and onwards, my focus changes a little bit. I start to immediately focus about next season. So that we're up and running, we've got 5, 6, 7 games under our belt. 2 things really. One is looking at new revenue streams. So outside of core football, are there things we could do to bring revenue to this club that other clubs are doing? So that's a key thing to start to horizon scan a little bit. But also start to look to next season. So a great example, if you think about we would like to launch kits on the 1st of July next year, there are a number of key steps to do that, and probably we need to start that process in October, November this season to do that for next year. And it's really impossible to play catch-up if you haven't started at the right time. So to look to next season and say, actually, some of the key things are important for us to do commercially, we need to start them very early. And there are some contracts which are coming up for sponsorship contracts, particularly that are coming up to the end of their renewal period, etc. So you start those conversations very early, see if people would like to renew, and you look at other potential sponsors to bring into the club. So I just want to share that's the kind of focus for me in the first 8 weeks, probably the next 4 or 5 weeks, and as we get into October, November, it's slightly changed that we're delivering today, but also very much looking for tomorrow to kind of bring as much revenue to the club as we go to next season.
Thank you, Andy. Over to Ryan Bradley, our Director of the Rochdale AFC Community Trust.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here. Not really had a chance to do this before, come up and talk to you about off-field things without being in a crisis management situation, so it's really good to be up here. I just thought I'd touch really, not wanting to look too far backwards, but although the Community Trust have been around for probably 30 years now, delivering all sorts of good programmes, we've sort of accelerated growth as we came out of COVID and grew so quite significantly coming out of COVID, and then bang, we had that the impact of relegation, and although it's separate to the football club in terms of our finances, and we operate on grant funded money and all that side of things, it really hurt us. We lost, I think, just short of £100,000 overnight from our community programmes, plus what we're losing on traded income, plus what we're losing off programmes where we rely on that club badge and brand to help drive us forward. And it's been a really sort of difficult period. We got ourselves up to about 22 staff, and then obviously once relegation hit, that started dwindling, and then people started finding their way into more secure positions and sort of leaving us. And I think by the time this time last year, we're down to about 11 members of staff. Really sort of not struggling, but having to sort of shrink what we did, having to work that a little bit harder and to try and get through things. And we're now at a point where I think we're starting to average out. We're back up to about 14 people. We're starting to level out what we're doing, start to get our plans and start to get our head above water again, really, and sort of get ourselves on an even keel, ready to kick off this season and sort of move ourselves forward. But that all sort of got blown out the window when the takeover came in, and in came the Ogdens. And I think most of you in this room sat here on that, on those last couple of forums that we've had, and heard how Cameron spoke about the importance of community to the club, how important it is to him and his family, and how that was a key driver in sort of purchasing the club and what he wants to achieve going forward. And as much as that's great, it does come with a lot of pressure from a trust that has generally been quite small, gone through a recent bit of growth, to now sort of have that pressure of wanting to go up another gear again. Especially coming from survival mode where we've been over the last 12 months, it's something that we've had to take a little bit of time to sort of get our head around and look at how we kick on again. Right now, we're busy. We're as busy as ever. We've just finished the year where we've had 22 learners on our AP programme, 61 qualifications, sports college, 100% of them have gone to uni. Soccer schools sold out this week here at Haywood Sports Village. I was up at Haywood today, and our over 75s are playing up there, alongside 50 kids on a soccer school and 30 on pre-season. And day-to-day business is just carrying on, but all the time looking at what we can do, bigger picture going forward. We're sort of looking at how we manage that. As George mentioned, it's not something that can happen overnight. We can't just go from knocking on people's door and asking them to support us and help us through crisis, to then turning around and say we want to upscale to here overnight. It takes a little bit of time to sort of build that. As a community trust, we're sort of rewriting our strategy for 2025 onwards. So we're looking at how we sort of move things forward. We're coming to the end of our current strategy. Our current strategy, which is around being unbeatable at home and winning away. And hopefully next year we've got 4 new facilities that we'll put up around the town, 4 small size football pitches, 3G football pitches, which will see about £1.2 million being invested out into communities away from here. But it's now how we then kick on and use those to sort of get the club's name out there in communities, and then also look at some of the core projects around community facilities and training grounds and how we sort of move our education forward. But it's a great time, it's a busy time, it's a worrying time because we've got to go, like we said, upscale pretty quickly. But all I can do is echo George really and say we're not going to change overnight. We're working on a lot of things in the background, and hopefully we can carry on with these sort of forums where we as a staff team can come to you guys and tell you about some of the good stuff that's going on, rather than just looking at crisis management. And as George said, my door's always open. If anyone wants to find out any more about what we do, why we do things, then please get in touch.
Thank you very much to Ryan, and to Andy, and to George. So similar on previous fans forums, what we'll do now is we're going to sweep the room. You'll get a chance to put your hand up and ask a question. Can I just remind you as well, this evening you'll probably see we're filming. It's not been streamed live, but it will be available on the club's YouTube channel tomorrow. So just be mindful of that, because obviously we'll have some younger fans who are tuned in tomorrow. So just be mindful of any. I'm sure you won't say anything inappropriate, but we are broadcasting this on the club's YouTube channel tomorrow. So we're now going to put the panel up to some questions this evening. So whether it's a football-related question for Jimmy or a non-football-related question for any of the other panel and directors. So first of all, we'll start on this table here. If you've got a question for the panel, please put your hand up. I'm sure there's lots of people got questions on here. Got a question for any of our panel this evening? If not, we're going to move to the next table. I'd like someone to put their hand up here and question to the panel. This chap's got a question. Just introduce yourself if you could, and direct your question, and one of the panel will hopefully give you the answer you're looking for.
Hi, it's Brad. I don't know who's going to answer, to be honest. Just wondering, what about having Sky Sports back in the bars to try and keep people here rather than going off to different bars, pubs, bring a bit of money back in? Because after the game, there's nothing for us.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Just to kind of talk around that to start with, a lot of people have noticed the BT Sport, or the TNT contract, sorry, as it is now with the National League's come to a close. We always used to get, as a venue, free TNT Sports in here. So unfortunately that will that won't be available unless we decide to pay for it. We're still having a look at what we want to do. The short answer is we'd absolutely love to have Sky in, and we're reviewing it. It's really, really expensive to have Sky in venues, I'm sure a lot of pubs know. Interesting when we go around to some clubs at the level, and I know it's really prevalent at the level below, that a lot kind of take their chances on a fire stick and stuff like that and hope everyone's going to look the other way, but we haven't quite reached those levels yet. But it's a really good idea. We're definitely looking into it. What's really interesting as well, I suppose, with the Sky suggestion now is they've got loads and loads of Championship League 1 and League 2 games as well. You can pretty much pick your game across there, so it's definitely something that we're looking into. I don't know if you want to add anything else on that, anybody? So yeah, it comes down to cost a bit, but we're keen to look into it.
Thanks for your question, Brad. Great question. Anyone else on this table would like to ask a question of the panel? If not, I'm going to come to the next table. Any ladies like to ask a question? Are you sure? Right, next table here, where the Dale supporters trust the base. There we go, George. If you just ask your question to the panel, please.
Hi, my name's Brian. This isn't a criticism at all, but it'd be interesting to hear the thought process behind a 3-year contract for a manager at this level. What advantage it might bring to the club.
Putting Jim on the spot there to talk around his own contract. You might want to add around that at the minute. The answer's really simple. We've got a 3-year vision to be back in the EFL. The ownership group, led by Cameron, have made that abundantly clear that it's not necessarily going to happen overnight, as we've alluded to with lots of other things. But the plan is very much by. I'm trying to work out what it'll be. What would it be? 26, 27? That sounds like a long way off. But certainly by that season, we want to be in a position, if we haven't already achieved it, to be really challenging at the very top of this league with a view to getting back into the EFL. Of course, and you mentioned it, Jim, last night in your BBC Radio Manchester interview, everyone's working towards that happening sooner. Very simply, going back to the question, George, we want those two things to be aligned. The length of the contract reflects the aspiration of the club to regain EFL status in the next 3 years. Everyone across the board of directors is fully behind Jim, and the length of the contract reflects that. I don't know if you want to add anything in there, not putting you on the spot.
But there's already also that.
First of all, I'd like to go back to the 2 goals that I scored earlier. I'm pretty
Someone that, Jim. You were a defender.
I'm sure it was more like 5 or 6. I definitely picked up some in training.
Sorry, I'll have to check Wikipedia again.
Yeah, 3-year contract. Pretty much in line with what George said there. Obviously, it's not my position to articulate my contract. It's the club's position to do that. I would just say, I would state straight from the off that I've got unbelievable gratitude to the football club and to all of you guys for the support you've given me to this point, and more importantly than anything, the support that you've given the team, and therefore I feel the hard work that has been shown from the team has been a direct consequence of all of that I've just mentioned. So first and foremost, whilst you give me the opportunity to do so, I would just like to thank everyone involved for committing to give me the contract that the football club has done so thank you very much for that. Outside of what George answered, I probably couldn't answer any more. I would probably only suggest that managers' contracts and players' contracts are totally different. Of course, you see managers sign 7-year contracts in the Premier League and they're gone in 6 months. So whilst, of course, players' contracts are watertight and they are exactly what they are, and they've been designed to protect players by the PFA, who've done a great job for them, and I do feel they deserve it in the in the dangerous world that is football. Managers' contracts aren't necessarily the same as that. But I think at surface level, at the very least, what the contract is, at least what it projects is that we're all trying to get the same thing in the same amount of time. We're not 5 different teams all with 5 different feelings. We're very much one team with you guys at the forefront of that as well. I think that's ultimately what the contract is symbolising, I think.
Thank you, Jimmy. George, does that answer your question? Yeah, thank you, George, aka Brian. Thank you, George, and thank you to Jimmy. Anyone else on this table have a question for the panel? Surely one of the supporters trust guys has got a question. I'm just looking at you, Bob. You've not got a question. That's most unlike you. Next table here, this chap here has got a question. If you could just introduce yourself, please, and hopefully one of the panel will answer the question.
Ian Tweedale. Question for Jim. Jim, is the playing budget now finished, or do we still have a few bob left for maybe centre half and maybe goalkeeper?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, to use your words, we still have a few bob left. Where we use that money, it may or may not be in the positions that you've mentioned. I'm reasonably happy in all of our positions at the moment, but still looking to strengthen the team wherever we feel it shows that it necessarily needs strengthening over the weeks so far and the weeks coming. But yes, there is a few bob spare. We're still very much in conversation with players that we like. We're still very much monitoring players that we like, but they're not necessarily available right now because there's a knock-on effect really from other clubs above us. Up until this point, I believe we've signed players mainly from the National League and from the league below also, and it's quite natural to take players from the same league that you're in or the league below earlier than you can potentially take a player from the league above. That's usually because those players go back to pre-season with the best intentions to try their best to get into the squads and get into the teams that they're currently contracted to. But the natural succession is that those football clubs add players, and in the final weeks before seasons kick off, or sometimes within the first few weeks, the teams higher up the pyramid begin to spit out players that they don't want anymore. So I think we've tried to be strategic to give ourselves some opportunity to pick up some late quality, and I'll be honest with you, that's something I've been doing constantly, and it's something that when I go home from here tonight, I'll have my laptop out doing once again.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Ian, for the question. Does that answer your question? Was that the answer he was looking for? It was a good answer. Right, another question here from this chap. If you just introduce yourself to the panel and direct your question, please.
Hi, I'm Richard, and questions for Jim. Are you planning for your team to play a more exciting and entertaining style of football this season?
Thanks, Richard. Genuinely, with hand on heart, when I was a player for Rochdale, all I ever wanted to do was have an inner happiness at the end of the game that we did okay, we did well, we gave our all. But after that, outside of immediate family, it was to try and make you guys happy, as many of you guys happy as possible. I don't think universally across the board everyone will ever be happy when we're talking about numbers as large as our fan base. I just don't think that's possible. I think football shows us that everywhere. But that was always, and everyone likes to be loved, and the team, myself, everyone in here, I think are no different. So I want us to come off the pitch and it's received some love from you guys, that you've enjoyed the performance. Hopefully the performance has been shown in a successful result, and as many people go home happy as possible on Saturday and Tuesday. Reflecting on how we played last year, I don't know how many of you guys, if any at all, listened on the radio last night when I was on. I'd be an idiot if I didn't reflect on last season, given the better opportunity that this year presents. So I said last night on radio, I'll pretty much repeat something similar. I felt last year, in the mid part of the season, when we had next to no players, there was a stage where we had one youth team player on the bench. I registered to play myself. I was going to register Kevin Gibbons to play as well. I felt in the midst of all that, and the only signings we could bring into the building were going to be free loans who were totally untested, total risks in the middle of the winter, to change playing style then, despite the fact there was things that I seen we needed to add, we needed to improve. I felt it was really, really dangerous. So at that stage, I made the choice. I decided that I would rather play the players that we've got, albeit there's not many of them, out of position, so that they know exactly what we're doing. And I knew that they were all fighting for each other. I knew it. I could see it every single day. I've been part of 10 different Rochdale changing rooms. I knew the good ones from the bad ones, and I knew that those lads were going to give everything. Whilst, as you say, I would like to always try and improve the football, always try and make it more entertaining, and of course always try and win. Last year I felt it was a little bit dangerous to do so in the midst of what was, well, a car crash of a season off the pitch. This year it's a total different potential platform. So we have an opportunity to start to build. Have we looked back at last season, how we played? 100%, of course we have. I'm also constantly watching football right now, football at the top, football at the bottom, all of it, and seeing where we can make gains. I think the data company that we've used are also very useful in that. I think there's things that we are going to look to add this season to our game. I think if you've had a close enough eye on pre-season games thus far, I think you may or may not have seen, but we certainly tried to have a blend to our football, and I think that's already started to show some results in some games, but there's still so much to do and so far to go. So I'm humble enough to know that I'm certainly not the best manager in the world, and I'm humble enough also to know that it's a constant learning game, and if I'm not looking at our performances and I'm not reflecting on how they've ended or how they're making people feel, then I'd be an idiot, in my opinion. So like anything else, I think whatever you're doing, whatever your job is, if you're not reflecting on the performance, if you're not reflecting on the output, and you're not comparing it to what's going on around you, I don't necessarily think you're being as responsible as you should be in that role. I try to be as responsible as I can be. I care very deeply, I'll tell you that. And we're always searching to raise the ceiling.
Thank you, Jimmy. Very comprehensive answer. You okay with that, Richard? Right, just going to make my way around the back of the room here to see if anyone here has a question for the panel. Any of you chaps here have a question this evening? You guys here? If not, I'm going to come to this part of the room. Do you have a question for the panel this evening? Right, early dart for us all tonight. Question for the panel. If you have a question, you can just put your hand in the air. If not, I'm going to come towards this side of the room. Come on, don't be shy. Let's have a question for the panel. Anyone on this table here? There we go. Thank you so much. Just introduce yourself to the panel.
Evening. My name's Stu. It's a question really, because I still don't really know this league, and it's probably going towards Jim. Who would you constitute of the threats in this league? Who are the big teams and the teams to watch out for, if you like?
Thanks, Stu. I think with not always, but usually when we look up and down any of the divisions and you look to determine the biggest threats and the biggest potential movers, it's a shame, but it's a fact. You inevitably look at the bank balances and who looks like they're spending the most, who's signing players that it looks out of place, but they're able to take players from the league above with ease, when these guys are rumoured to be signing for other league clubs with, you know, potentially more ambition. So it's those clubs really. I think some of them are not too far from here. I think York, just down the road, I think are doing significant things financially that look out of place for this division. I think if you look into things like, and it may be a small thing to some people's eye, but the amount of players they've paid up this year, and I know how much money it takes just to pay players up, never mind then purchase players from other football clubs, it's quite obscene for the level. I think Forest Green, who are coming down from the league, is an easy one to identify, but when you also look at what they've been bringing into the building from the league, it's inevitable that they can't help but be dangerous, and I would imagine they'll start as the outright favourites in the league. Dare I say it, I think if our neighbours got themselves in order down a little bit closer down the road, then they have been doing things in terms of signing players from the levels above for a long time now, but who am I to say what they should or shouldn't be doing? But I feel if they get strategy in order, they've got the clout to do whatever they want really, but haven't been able to do it thus far. And then I think there's a couple of dark horses who've been signing players again that I know from being on the inside, and I know from the agent circles who are constantly peppering my phone, who are probably doing it now while I'm talking here, that Ebbsfleet, for example, are paying. It feels crude and it's rubbish to bring football down to finances, but you've all been in football as long as I have and around football as long as I have. You know it has a direct impact about what goes on the pitch, but not always. So Ebbsfleet, another team, making big moves. Southend this year, if they get the troubles at the pitch in order, the big fan base who can bring big players in. So it's those guys really. They're the real financial clout in the division, and I think I'm just glad. I'm just feeling grateful that we've been able to get our own house in order to start this season, and we've got a competitive opportunity to compete with the guys in the top half, definitely.
Thanks again, Jimmy. Thanks for the question, Stu. Anyone else on this table have a question for the panel? If you do, put your hand up. If not, I'm going to come this direction here. So, question? No? Anyone on this table here has a question? This chap has a question. Very good. If you just introduce yourself to the panel, please, sir.
Good work.
Good evening, my name is Christian. First of all, I'm not entirely sure who's best positioned to answer this, but I thought I'd ask it anyway. For me, I know I appreciate it, you mentioned we're only kind of 5 months into this kind of process, but I was kind of hoping to get a bit more information on kind of the direction the club's going in terms of self-sustainability and what that might look like in terms of in 3-5 years time, how we could be self-sustainable, what that would look like. I don't know if any more information could be given at this point, but I thought I would ask.
Good.
Thanks for the question, Christian. So we could be here all night talking about this, but I'll try and wrap it up in a couple of minutes, and obviously anyone else can share their opinion as we go. There's loads and loads of unknowns, I think, is probably the first thing to say. We're not quite sure what's happening, albeit Labour have committed to the independent regulator and all that kind of stuff, but we haven't really got clarity on what that's going to mean in terms of redistributing money down the pyramid in terms of actual figures just yet. So we have to take that into account, and that'll make a tangible difference to clubs at this level, and probably one side up and down as well. For ourselves, and Jim's talked a little bit about Oldham there. For ourselves, we're fortunate enough to be in the second year of a parachute payment. Oldham won't be in that this year, but for context and to put a figure on it, if we're still in this division next year, there'll be a hole of around in the 400,000s of what we would miss out on in the parachute payments. So we've got to get £400,000 back just to stay where we are this year, or it's got to come in from another source. But as we look at moving towards self-sustainability, what I will say is, just to qualify, in the current conditions with no fan-led review and no anything else, it's really, really hard in this league. Really, really hard. We shared some figures on the board a little while ago. I can't remember if it was the last fans forum or the one before that, of kind of the losses that people typically run at to get out of this league, and even really big clubs, your Wrexhams and your Notts Counties. Wrexham, when they won this league, for example, won it at a loss of £5 million for the season. So it's really difficult to make ends meet. There are some examples of people who've done it in one-off years. So Boreham Wood, when they were in the playoffs a couple of seasons ago, and they had a good cup run when they went to Everton, managed to have a good season. But as we stand here today, there's a few different things. We have to try and maintain player trading, but to do that, the chances are we're going to have to get back in the EFL. The reason for that is much of our player trading, as you guys all know, comes from academy products. And while we've still got some really promising academy products at the moment, unfortunately, due to the Elite Player Performance Plan regulations, that will come to an end at the end of this season. We have to start a new youth development program. So that will take a little bit of time to bear fruit. Getting into the EFL ultimately at the moment, as things stand today, is about an extra £2 million a year. You've seen what our losses run at. We tend to run at a loss of somewhere between $500,000 and $1.5 million if you strip out player trading and cup runs and all that kind of stuff. So if we say that we would get that extra £2 million a year, that would get us close. Of course, Jim will come knocking on the door for some additional funds when we do get up there, rightly so, because I'm sure you'll confirm, Jim, that some of the money being spent in League Two this summer's a lot more than what, I'll put it this way, a lot more than what it was last time we were in there. In terms of some off the field areas, so Andy touched on it a little bit. We must, and some of his responsibility and the reason he's chosen to join an exciting project is we have to bring in some additional commerciality to what we do, and some of that will look like some capital projects. So it'll look like Ryan mentioned the community hub / training ground, but we can expect over the medium term, like I said, it might not be in the next couple of years, but we can expect some developments on site here as well that will help us bring in some additional revenue. I know I've rambled on a bit there. It's so multifaceted though that it's quite difficult to give one specific answer. 5 years might be long enough to get us there. 5 years might not be long enough to get us there. We might get there sooner, who knows. If you want a personal opinion, I think it'll be quite difficult as things stand at the minute for a National League club for a prolonged period of time to consistently break even or make a profit. I think for us to be able to achieve that situation requires us to get back in the Football League. So the focus, as much as there's tons of focus off the field, of course, but much of the focus this summer has been how can we be efficient in terms of our costs off the field to allow that increased playing budget and to allow Jim to invest in the team and give us the best chance of being successful on the field. Because if we talk about fan-based development ultimately relies on winning, I think. So if we win on the field, it gives us a good chance of growing the fan base and bringing some additional revenue in from there as well. Sorry, I haven't got a one-word answer for you to summarise it, but there's a few things I think perhaps that we can unpack and take away there. I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything.
Let's go.
I think Ryan's just, you say a few words, Ryan?
I think it's just, there's lots of things, there's no golden bullet, and I think that's where we've tried to be set up at board and exec level, is that there's no one thing that will make us sustainable. We've got to try lots of different things, and the other word in that is different. We've got to look at alternative ways and different ways of doing things. If we keep on doing things the way that we have always done them, we'll carry on getting the same results. So we've certainly been tasked to look at different ways in which we can, Andy's looking at different ways in which we can generate revenue. I'm looking at different ways in which the community can operate and maybe support from other elements of things. George's looking at how we can control costs. All these different elements which hopefully, when you add them all up, will get us there. But the thing of one thing that will make us sustainable, it just doesn't exist.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, George. And thank you to Christian for the question. I think this chap here, do you have a question, sir? In the Rochdale? You have a question, yeah. Which this chap has got our last season's home kit on, which gives me a perfect opportunity to say, head over to the website right now and order online our brand new home shirt. Just introduce yourself if you could.
My name's Ian Bailey. It's a question for Andy. We're 2 weeks away from the home game against Dagenham, and I've not seen anything yet regarding match day hospitality, i.e. pre-match meals. There's a group of us that want to book tables for a certain number of games, and we're just not able to at the moment.
So, yeah, in terms of, there's a couple of things that have been released recently. The match sponsorships were released about 2 or 3 weeks ago now. So if you wanted to book, a match sponsor, a programme, a ball sponsor, that's available. We release games match by match. So Dagenham is now on the website. Hospitality is live on the website to book for Dagenham, and we've already taken in the double digits in terms of people to book that through the ticketing system. So that they're all live, and as the games come on now, then they roll out week by week by week, and the hospitality is booked through future ticketing on our website. So that's live now. We released the kind of packages. We have some fans who want to book for the whole season, so they've taken a season package. At the same time, we've said the price, etc. For hospitality in the 1907 is £48 for an adult, and then there's a season upgrade price or a child price as well. But that's all in the public domain. So there's a bit of a time lag in getting all that onto the website, and that's around resource really. But social media, etc. has launched all of those in the last 4 or 5 weeks. But yeah, happy to chat to you afterwards. But from my point, I think pretty clear it's all out there. It was just playing a little bit of catch up to get it onto the website. But it is on all future ticketing, so you can book now, and please do so.
Thank you very much, Andy, and thank you, Ian, for the question. Before I make my way forward in on this line here, I have a question for the panel. This chap has here, just introduce yourself if you could.
Hi, my name's David. It's more to do with the football this season. So from the friendly on Saturday, it appeared we're playing different formation. Is that something you're looking to be doing going forward?
Hi, David. Yeah, I think with eyes on the back end of last season, it's actually a formation that we began to use it was match day 32, I think it was, or match day 33 that we changed. After Solihull at home, we actually implemented the tactic or the formation, if you like, that we've practiced with in pre-season. Then it gave us some uplift in some certain areas that we felt we needed to, or we wanted to try to perform better in, and it was something that we started this pre-season with. So yeah, well noticed on that front. It was definitely something that's been a continuation from the back end of last season. We are just a little bit different in a couple of aspects at the moment because the players are different, so you have to be. So moving forward, what we done this summer, for example, with selling George Nevitt, I mean, I don't think we would ever not sell a young, aspiring footballer that comes out of Rochdale to a level that's promising for them, and the deal becomes as promising for the football club as it was in the end. Just on a purely simple level, I didn't want to sell George Nevitt. I really didn't, because I loved him. I brought him in out of, well, nowhere really, because I identified qualities in him that I thought they could be brilliant for the way we're trying to play football. And I think he had a really admirable season, and he done really well as a young boy, when he also got a small amount of criticism along the way, which was big stuff to take for him in his first season in men's football. So that sort of stuff was admirable for him. But the loss of George Nevitt and planning for the loss of George Nevitt, it does alter style. It has to. I think because we're not Man City and we won't take anyone we want from wherever we want it, you'll never be able to truly have everything you want. I don't think you can plan and prep and identify as much as possible to go in the direction that you want to, but then you will have to show, I think, slight flexibility with what your makeup looks like once you've got it all together. I'm really pleased with everything we've got. I really am. But you sometimes have to wait for the training ground to show you the niche differences that you might have to make with the group that you end up building. So I think a slight change in a couple of areas, but you are correct with the change you've identified. But it was something that we adopted last 12 games of last season, really.
Thank you, Jimmy. David, does that answer your question? Does you have a follow-up question, or is that okay? We're okay. This chap's got a question, yes.
A question, I think, for Richard, please. Are there any plans to honour Ian Henderson's achievements at the club? I mean, something permanent. Maybe name one that stands after him, or one of the suites upstairs, something like that.
At Carlton.
I don't know how these things work. I don't normally get a speaking part. I think there's been sort of events already sort of mentioned on the website, and we're keen to do whatever we can for Ian or for Endo to go out with a bang. Where that will end up in the future, we don't know. It's not my choice anymore. We're very, very conscious of the contribution he's made to the club. Of course we are. But where that will end, we don't know. We could be led by you, the fans. It's just something really that will progress as the season goes on. So, we'd love to have a testimonial match. We'd love to have a testimonial dinner. All the different things that you would want for this sort of guy, for Endo, that's given so much to the club. So we'll monitor those as the season goes on. And as and when we get to a stage where we might have developments to tell you, or whether we want your input on this, and your, the fans might have a big say on this as well, then obviously we'll take those into consideration for you.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks, Dave, for the question. A great question as well. A great servant to the club who's turns 40 in January and still whipping it up. Right, any more questions off this table here for our panel before I make my way forward? You sure? Okay, next table here to the left. Do we have any questions for the panel? Well done, just introduce yourself to the panel and fire your question.
Hi, my name is Ben. My question is for Jim. Do you know who your number one is this season? Because I know in pre-season we've played McNicholas a couple of times and Brad Kelly a couple of times. Is there any chance that Brad Kelly could be number one for this season?
The simple answer to that is probably that Luke's been brought in to be the number one. I like to create an environment that I think gives everyone the opportunity to push for a place in the Rochdale starting 11. I think if I don't let the training ground become a place whereby people don't think they can be rewarded for true hard work, then or quality, then you won't have a George Nevitt from last season. You won't have those young guys being rewarded for what they're actually doing day in, day out, or what they're actually given, because as we've seen in Rochdale teams in the past, and every football team everywhere, sometimes some people need a kick up the place, whatever word you want there, and I think sometimes that can come from the manager, sometimes it can come from a teammate, but sometimes it can come from an outstanding performance from someone that isn't necessarily supposed to be in the starting 11 because no one thought they were going to be there. Simple answer is Luke's a very good goalkeeper. Wrexham paid a lot of money for him from Ireland, and he's had a disturbed time there with an injury that didn't allow him to naturally become Wrexham's number one at the time, and therefore Wrexham, having the money they've got, went to the market and signed an unbelievable number one in his place while he was injured. Therefore his pathway was blocked, but he's a very good goalkeeper who we've brought in to be the number one. BK understands that, but all shirts are equally available to anyone that shows how hard they want them and shows the performances to take them on the training ground.
Great answer, Jimmy. Great question, Ben. And for the avoidance doubt, the word Jimmy was looking for was bottom.
Anybody else? The dating last week. As them outside got all the statistics, do we just where you are start baby. Just excuse you a sec. And then Sadie. How like that?
Well, good to go, sorry. Anyone else have a question here? Alison, you got a question? I'm sure you have, thank you.
Hi, it's Alison. I just wanted to comment first on Jim. It was a bit of I remember what it was like at New Year's Day at the Fylde, and you think, wow, I don't really want to start this year off like this. And Jez was injured, and it was an absolute nightmare, and you were signed up registered as a player, and you thought, right, it can't get any worse. And but we came out the other side, and I think you have deserved the right to get this 3-year contract. You know, you really did knuckle down, you put everything on the line, and I wish you all the best. But what I would like to know is are there any plans for the squad to come back to Rochdale to train? Is there any opportunity that we can find a training ground where they would be based in Rochdale?
I think I can start to answer this question, but I'll definitely have to pass the mic to someone else when it becomes based on where the club's currently at, actually trying to make that a reality. Just in terms of my feelings, I can answer that. I would absolutely love it. I think it's crucial that we get the team back to the town on a day-to-day basis and have the outreach to, you know, wherever they can forge connection, wherever they can help. I'm highly aware, because I've been doing it at Rochdale for 10 years. When the team enter an environment that's in the town and they spend some time there, they interact with people and everything else, I feel a genuine uplift in the place, but I also see it in the team as well, when there's some shared connection between. We've been down at Millabout a few times, haven't we? And it's lovely. I love it when we come there. I love it when the team goes there. You've looked after us so well so many times, Alison, and we're really grateful for that. And I may be speaking out of turn, but I feel, you'll tell me when we leave, I don't know, but it feels amazing to be in and amongst our own people. We're not in and amongst our own people at the moment over in South Manchester. We're there for a reason. It's purpose built, and it provides us what we need to try to meet the needs of being a football team that's trying to win a game at the end of the week. But it goes far beyond that, really. I think the plan that the guys talked about, there was 2 of them, they talked about getting back to the Football League within 3 years. But arguably, and I know I'm selfish and I want the football one, I really do, but arguably, if you zoomed out to what really matters, the 5-year plan to make the football club completely sustainable and back inside the town and have that interconnection where we could have a community hub whereby we train, people come and eat, people come and use the gym, people use the suites, what I don't even know what it looks like, but in my mind it looks something like that. I think that's absolutely crucial to our football club moving forward. It's fundamental, I think, to why the Ogdens have decided to sign up for this. I feel that they want the best for the football, and I know once the football starts, all our focus goes from all the bigger stuff to just like the pitch, and it's there, and I get it, because it's football, and we love that, we want that to be right, but probably the most important part is what you're talking about. I didn't answer your question, I just told you my feelings, so I'll pass to someone who can answer the question.
I'll pass on to Ryan in a moment, just to echo Jim's thoughts and articulate exactly what I know Cameron would say if he was here, that it's not a matter of if, it's definitely a matter of when. They've been fully clear along the journey so far that having a first team set up, and occasionally academy set up that work out of Platt Lane, doesn't work. It's a great facility, but it doesn't work for the longevity, and it doesn't help some of the things that I'm sure Ryan will talk about in terms of player engagement within the community at the moment. So whilst we're not talking about tens and tens of millions of pounds, there is a fund available to assist bringing the first team back into the town. We're constantly looking at sites, we're constantly having meetings. There's lots of rumours, as I'm sure people allude to, about some of the plans, and they're ongoing. There's nothing concrete to report at the moment. What I will say is we went over to Fleetwood to Pulfoot, that some of you may have been to the other day for pre-season. Unfortunately, Jim, it's not going to be as good as that, whatever we get. But some of you will have been to Accrington Stanley's community hub, and that's a wonderful example of what can be achieved. Absolutely brilliant facility that services the needs of that town really well. So I think when, not if's the takeaway message. But I'll pass on to Ryan just because he's really well versed in these areas, and the community trust will be central to any plans that we put together on this.
Yeah, not much more to add really. We've been looking for, well, I think we went over Simon to Accrington probably 3 years ago, and I've worked in the town long enough to remember Bowley and remember all these different sites that have been mentioned, and it seems like the search has been going on forever. We did get close with the sites in Haywood that we looked at. We've had plans drawn up for them. We sort of got there with it, but factors outside of our control put that 8 to 10 years away in terms of planning. And the sort of message that we've had is that's far too long. We need something sooner. Having Rochdale AFC based out of Rochdale is not good for the community side of things. If you look at the other side of sustainability, it costs us. Not just the first team being at Platt Lane, but you look at the women's team, the ladies' teams, military vets, sports college. We've just spent probably 3 weeks trying to find places for them to train and play, and it's just not sustainable. We think that training ground is a central anchor to everything that we're trying to achieve. Get the lads back in Rochdale, get the team back in Rochdale, get that feel about it, but also play a big part in that sustainability piece. It's just a case of working with partners to try and find the right site to go forward with.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you to George and to Alison for the question, and a great little plug for Millabout as well. And I can vouch, they're great. Follow them on Facebook. Right, anyone else got a question before I step to the front of the room? Question here for the panel. Thank you. Just introduce yourself.
David, and I want to know about the pitch. Before you talked about money and losing money, we've lost more money on that pitch than anything else. And if you're bringing good players here to play on the wing and it's waterlogged in front of the stand, and how the hell can they control the ball? It's absolutely impossible. So what are you doing as a bunch of directors about getting that pitch sorted out once and for all? And what's it cost this summer? Have we had to pay for that? Or has the firm that laid it had to pay for that? What's the score?
Really good question. There's some bits that we can share, and there's some bits that we can't share because there's potential legal issues. There's been some remedial work that's taken place. The pitch is looking good at the moment. We're talking in the tens of thousands rather than in the hundreds of thousands. We hope there'll be some improvement, but to answer your question, does it solve the problems? Definitely not. To solve the problems first, we've been advised, we've had tons of different people come out and look at the pitch. To solve the problems completely, we're talking full renovation, and we're talking like 7-figure fees for that, and really big projects in terms of months, not weeks. So by the time, not saying that the funds would have been available this time around, but the timelines wouldn't have worked regardless. So we've done significantly more work on it this summer than last summer. Last summer, as you can imagine, there wasn't anything available. We did the bare minimum on it, and unfortunately, the weather as it is here really battered it, and we were fortunate actually not to lose more games than what we did. We had a run of about 6 or 7 games where it was a pitch inspection at midday as a routine thing. So entirely right to point that out. We feel, and I'll be honest, we feel that the pitch wasn't installed correctly. We feel that we've spent, I think it's in the public arena, it's £660,000 basically was the spend on the pitch. I think it was in 2020. Someone else might know better than. Yeah. So we have paid a good amount of that, and we haven't paid some of it because we're in dispute because we don't think the pitch works properly. It doesn't drain properly, as you've correctly pointed out. There's a potential legal path there, but it's not really for me as a staff member to comment on that. But we are exploring every single avenue we can to move that forward. So to answer your question succinctly, there's been a decent amount of work done on it. We feel it's going to be better, but it's not going to be perfect. And there's a bigger project going on at the minute in terms of working out, A, can we get our money back that we spent on it originally, because we think it's either been installed incorrectly or we've been missold it or whatever, or B, do we just have to bite the bullet and go for a full reinstall, but how do we fund that if we do have to do that?
but a very valid question.
Thank you, George, and thank you, David, for the question. Anyone else on this table have a question for the panel? Right, just this table left here before we just sweep the room one more time. Do we have any questions off this table to ask of the panel? Just introduce yourself if you could.
My name is Rod. I'd like to ask two very important questions. The first one is about Pin It to Win It. Is there any reason why we stick it over on the far side and then this year suddenly it's gone down in the right-hand corner? But it's very difficult for most people to see. I sit at the left hand of the director's box, and if I stand on my wife's shoulders I can just about see in the corner. Is there some reason why we don't put it in the, not necessarily in the middle of the pitch, but somewhere where we can all see it?
It's dark. No, better to win. Yeah,
We put it where the groundsman tells us to. Quite simply, and we've also got to take into account where there's a crowd in and which direction we're kicking footballs and things like that. But quite literally, it's on the groundsman's advice on which areas of the pitch we can go to. Yeah, it goes back to the previous question. Previous question there, we go where the groundsman tells us.
Thank you, Ryan. Does that answer your question? Does anybody else have a question before we take some from the Dale Supporters Trust? If I've missed you out this evening, just put your hand up and I'll be glad to come around the room if you have a question, because I think we've, as usual, gone over time. Is this a question, yeah? Are you just testing me to come back down the end of the room? Just introduce yourselves to the panel if you could.
Question to anybody else really. How important this coming season is the cup success, like qualifying for the FA Cup and going further in the FA Trophy? Because personally I think it's a trophy that we don't put our full strength sides into, and we kind of use it a bit like the Checker Trade Trophy, putting young bodies out. I think it is a trophy we could actually win, we Gay said last season, and we take it a bit for granted, but I think trophy success and qualifying for the FA Cup financially could help us.
That's from Kieran, Jim.
Thanks, Kieran.
I think Jim's going to answer the question, Kieran, here.
No problem. Yeah. So genuinely, the FA Trophy last year, I felt, based on the fact that we had the smallest squad in the National League, was dangerous for us to go deep into. And I did see that the teams, obviously there's always going to be a winner, and it's a great story for the winner to get a day out at Wembley, and it's brilliant for the fan base, it really is. But the ones that went deep, and then they were getting games called off because of it in the deep water of the season at the back end, like your Wealdstons, for example, they were in real peril, because I didn't feel like even themselves could sustain the amount of backlog of league games that they had, plus the trophy games that they had as well. Now, we would have had to do the same thing, but with 5 or 6 players less than any other team. You've seen how it was in the depths of winter when we went filed with one youth team on the bench. Halifax, we were down on the bench, didn't fulfil the bench at all. This year, this is something we've talked about internally, which I will share. We want to fight on all fronts. We want to be able to build a squad that has the numbers to attempt to attack every single tournament we're in. I am a bit concerned about the new tournament. I'll be totally honest with you all now. There's a tournament that I feel has been set up purely for Premier League 2 teams. I think I don't think we've been treated with the greatest respect in terms of the FA deciding or the Premier League decided we want a brand new tournament for the young teams at the Premier League level. Where can we get it from? Okay, the non-league teams, the National League guys, they can just play. The teams that are already playing 60 games, we'll give them an extra 10. And I'm using loose numbers there, but that particular tournament, I'll be honest with you, we haven't even been told the format of it yet. We don't know when it starts. I know that 18 teams have entered out the National League. 8 have decided not to. Are those the right numbers, George? 16 and 8, my bad. And up until this point now, we don't know the format. So I'll be truthful with you all in this room. I'll assess that tournament on its merits, and if I feel it serves us, if I feel it gives us the opportunity to have something that we can sustain, then definitely we'll attack that competition as well. But the FA Trophy, as you mentioned, will be treated competitively this year like any other tournament.
Thanks, Jimmy, and thank you, Kieran, for the question. Before we go to some of the questions from the Dale Supporters Trust who can't be here this evening, does anyone else have a question? If you do, put your hand up. I'm just conscious we're going a little bit over time. I think the first question, Andy, could be for you. Oh,
it's a comment.
Sorry, David. Just wait a second. Let me just give you the microphone. Thank you. Go for it, David.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Last season, when we played Oldham Athletic, some of the fans, including me, tried to get into the Players' Lounge at the end of the game. Now, we go into the Players' Lounge at the end of the game on a Tuesday night when there's nobody there. And they tried to stop us going in, saying that we need an armband or something. Now, I thought that was absolutely deplorable, that you let a lot of people from Oldham that are never going to come again, yet this is the detriment of our own fans. So this time, this season, please do something about it. Leave a certain number of fans for people like me that can get it without being accosted and have to say to people, if you don't want me to come in, go and get the police. It's absolutely outrageous. I'm looking at you when I say that. But no, it didn't stop me. But I just want to make that point, yeah? Just make sure you look after the home fans, because other people say, well, turn around and say, come in here again after that. Yeah? Thank you.
Point taken there, David. I'm pretty certain we've got a very swift and short answer to that, although I'll be moving on because of the time. Do we have an answer if anybody wants to answer that one? Just briefly? Yeah, it's pretty obvious the answer, isn't it? But I'm sure Ryan will cover it in 60 seconds. Please, Ryan.
We're full to capacity. We couldn't get anybody else up there, and we have to prioritise somewhere or another. But I did put it in your handover document, Andy, that we need to look at how we sort that out. And as he's mentioned, sorting out matchday operations will be done this week, won't it? So from there. But yeah, we do need to look at it on those games. They don't come round too often, but when they do, we need to look at how we look after those who support us.
Thank you, Ryan. Point taken, David. I think quite simply, it's a health and safety issue. It was a very popular fixture, and we were chock-a-block, and that was the reason why. Right, just conscious of the time here, so we have gone a little bit over. We have some questions from the Dale Supporters Trust who are not able to get here this evening. Andy, this first question is for you, and you've not been seeing these questions. In fact, the first time I'm reading it. Andy, has the club severed ties with the match-worn shirt company? If not, will the club be doing so? And if the club is staying with them, please explain why. Surely either an eBay auction or an auction event run by the club would prove more fruitful than losing out an opportunity of 20% of funds on each shirt just to have a third party run it. In 60 seconds, Andy.
So we have a multi-year contract with the Match One shirt, and outside of the auctions, they actually, part of that contract, pay us a sponsorship fee as well. So actually, no, it is something we're going to continue with going forward. It's something that I've inherited as a contract. We have an obligation to sustain going forward. We have commitments about the auctions that we'll do, but probably which is less visible than the actual auction site as well. There's also a sponsorship fee that comes into the club as a partnership fee that we get from them, but it's something that's continuing for next season.
Right, thank you much, Andy. Next question, keep the microphone, because it's for you again, Andy. This is for a fan member of the Trust. He can't be at the forum because he lives far away, but he's interested to hear this question been asked on YouTube tomorrow. What plans do the club have to upgrade the digital ticketing system, given that it hasn't worked for some time on analogue phones? Or will the fans simply need to have a physical card, which could incur a cost of £5?
Again, I think we have been with Future Ticketing for a number of years now. I'm not massively close to how that experience is working. I know we've looked at ticketing on a match day and how the app works, and particularly if people have queues, how they can get through that system as quickly as possible. But we're working on going with Future Ticketing to make sure that experience is as good as possible.
Thank you, Andy. Great answer. Last question, or it's a two-folded question. This is relating to the academy. So, George, you might want to answer this one. The question says, with the restructure of the academy, will any of the academy players be offered first-year scholarships? And John Dunlop, Brooklyn Bailey and Luke Mann, have they signed professional contracts?
Yeah, so I think there might be some terminology issues on that one, Dave. So I think what they probably mean is first-year professional contracts. We can't offer scholarships, unfortunately, anymore due to not being within the EFL. So our youth team at the minute is consisting just of second-year scholars. I'll let Jim talk about some of the players who've made an impact in pre-season and towards the back end of last season in a moment. But to answer the question on Brooklyn, Luke and John, they have all agreed terms. They are all going to be Rochdale players for the 24-25 season. Brooke was on the pitch, for example, on Tuesday night at Avro. We foresee them starting off with the youth team. So in the EFL Youth Alliance, you can play 3 under-19s players down. But as Jim alluded to, if people are performing and if people are pulling trees up and making it difficult for him and his staff to ignore them, opportunities will obviously present themselves. But yeah, to answer the question, they have agreed terms. In terms of professional contracts, which I assume the question means for the second year scholars moving forwards, it'll always be Jim's decision, so I'll pass that over to him.
Yeah, so there's a number of the players. What is good about the kind of one club, one site? I know that's not in Rochdale yet, and Platt Lane doesn't serve us the best it can, but it's better than where we were when we were in Rochdale ourselves, but the youth team was somewhere else. What we do benefit from now at Platt Lane is that we can all house both teams and both staff of those teams in one place for at least one day a week. So what I do get the chance to do is see our training and see theirs, and also take players back and forth to and from our training. Some of them you'll have seen the other night, and then there's some who won't have made the pitch yet, like today's training, for example. Leo Cooper and Will Clift, 2 names not mentioned here in these type of rooms yet, but train with us today and have the opportunity to leave impressions, really. With the older players, Brooke, Luke and John Dunlop, the format is changing a little bit, under what basis they stay at the club in terms of the terminology. Like George said, as we go from an academy to a, what's the correct term, George? Yeah, so I don't know what to call that, but whatever the new system is, those older players will decide to stay or leave, like on a different basis to what it would be as an academy. They're still very much in between youth team and first team. Whether they're actual professionals at that stage, I'm yet to understand the wording really, but every player that's training with us every day, whether in the youth team or the first team, we're in conversations constantly between youth team coaches and ourselves about who's doing well, who's knocking on the door, who's making impacts in games, who's showing the most. And at the minute, I let the youth team lead me in terms of putting players forward, because for me to just see them on the limited one day a week or the game day that I get to see them, it's not enough. I have to trust their eyes, I have to trust my own staff, trust the staff in that department, say, you tell me who deserves to train with us. And that's the basis that I bring young players to the first team at the moment. They're recommended by the youth team coaches, they come and train with us, and then we reflect on it from that point. But despite the fact the academy is about to change itself, that identification system won't change at all. And if there's talented players and they're knocking on the door, they'll walk through the door.
Right, thank you, Jimmy. Couple more questions that have just been handed here from the Dale Supporters Trust. One of them is a pretty short one. I'm sure George wants to answer this. Is there a reason why we're not being streamed live tonight? And can you explain the difference between a live stream and a recording, which will be available tomorrow on the club's YouTube channel?
Yeah, just in conjunction with everybody really. The Wi-Fi, as those of you who have been in, is really poor at the minute, so we're looking to get some work done on that, but we weren't confident that the stream would hold up, is the short answer to that.
Right, thank you, George. Last question tonight, again, has been submitted by a member of the Dale Supporters Trust who's not able to be here this evening, and it says, is there a reason why the manager is not been interviewed after each pre-season game so far, or been asked about subjects fans would be interested in hearing, such as different formations, how adaptable we're looking, and to be mixing up our style of play?
I'll start that one off, Dave. I'm sure, Jim, you'll want a little bit of a say on that. One thing that when we step back and review how we operate every area is we're really conscious of overexposing people. My personal view, and we looked at it for the 21-22 season. We look back on it. No, 22-23, sorry. So Robbie Stockdale's season. And I remember sitting with Robbie at the end of the season, and we worked out that over the 365 days that he'd been from the start of the season to the end of the season, he'd done 148 interviews. So he'd done pre-match and post-match for every single game, including pre-season. So let's say, conservatively, 55 games. Every signing, previews on FA Cup, fans forums, etc., etc. And we just felt it was too much. So we feel that my personal view is there's only so much you can ever say. We want people beating the drum, and of course we want Jim to be front and centre of that. But we need to expose other people to it as well. So we've made the decision last season that we were going to try and use the players a little bit more. We think it's important for the players to have the opportunity to speak to fans. So typically you might notice that the players tend to do pre-match and Jim tends to do post-match at the moment. That's a conscious decision. And we still think we get a really good amount of information out there. And it was Jim's decision to go on the radio last night, and there's other avenues other than just club media available as well. But yeah, my personal view is we need to be careful about overexposing any one individual. That's not just Jim, but that can go to staff members, players, lots of different people really. I don't know if you want to add anything to that at all.
Right, thank you, George. So, as we said at the beginning of the evening, we're not streaming live. However, it will be available to watch on the club's YouTube channel tomorrow. So, anyone who's tuned in, listening tomorrow, hopefully you've heard your question. That brings us to the end of this evening. Thank you ever so much for coming here to the Ratcliffe Bar. Obviously, we'll do another fans forum at the beginning of 2025. when we're halfway through our campaign. Can I just thank our panel this evening? We'll give them a round of applause at the end. First of all, George Dells, our Chief Operating Officer, Andy Duff, our Commercial and Marketing Director, your first team coach, Jim McNulty, Murray Knight from the Dale Supporters Trust, Richard Knight, one of our directors, and last but certainly not least, we've got our Director of the AFC Community Trust, Ryan Bradley. Thank you ever so much. Thank you for coming this evening. Looking forward to welcoming you all here on Saturday for our final pre-season friendly. League 2 opponent Salford City will be here, and then things get underway on the 10th of August when we head across to Lincolnshire to take on newly promoted Boston United. If you're looking for some transport to get across to Boston a week on Saturday, go and sign up with the guys from the Dale Supporters Trust, and then we'll be home on the 17th of August here at the Crown Hall Arena against Dagenham and Redbridge. Have a great night, and thank you once again for coming.